Today we have a great topic, one that we have not presented before or had a focus on before, but it's something that we have received feedback on. And so we thought today, this last workshop would be timely in having it presented. And today's topic is mentoring for career readiness and advancement beyond the academic setting. And so I'm going to read a little bit about today's webinar topic, and then I'm going to then have each of our panelists share a little bit about themselves, introduce themselves, and then after that, I'll proceed with the question. And then what I would encourage you to do would be to, as you have questions, either commit them to memory, write them down, place them in the chat, and Stephen McBride, who is one of the MAP team members, will help me monitor those questions when we get to the end. So we're going to go to around 12:45 or so, and then we'll stop it at that point and then open it up for Q&A from the audience. So again, be mindful of the question you want to answer or ask, excuse me, once we get started. So let me share with you, many students in graduate school may find it difficult to prepare for their lives after graduation. Even more, it is important to stay focused and prepare for one's career, especially considering the stress and uncertainty added by virtual classes and adjusted schedules. This workshop will feature some helpful strategies for career readiness and advancement after graduate school. Please join us for this discussion on preparing for the future. And I also want to say, before I have our panelists introduce themselves, is that, there's usually some tension among students, master's and doctoral students, when it comes to this notion of, okay, they're about to earn their degree, they're about to go out in the workforce, especially doctoral students, and this notion of maybe, do I want to pursue a faculty track position, a tenure track position, excuse me, or do I want to go out in business industry? So we're going to get into those things and all things related to that. So without further ado, I would like to turn over. So Dr. Shalamar Armstrong, if you could introduce yourself, and then once you finish, we'll go on to the next panelist after that.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to say this is a great program. I've attended in the past. I've heard a lot about it, and I'm glad to be on this stage to discuss one of my favorite topics is just emerging students into the job market. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Agriculture, of agronomy, the College of Agriculture. I've been at Purdue for about six years now, but it's complex because I got my doctoral degree from the same department in which now I'm a faculty member. So I've gotten to be involved with Purdue agronomy, Purdue agriculture from multiple aspects. People who taught me are now my colleagues, and able to see them push students out into the job market and then do it myself. I think that we're going to have some great nuggets that we can discuss here today that will help everyone. So just glad to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Armstrong. Next we have Dr. Oliver. Go ahead, Dr. Oliver.
Hi, everyone. Haley Oliver. I'm a professor in food science. I've been at Purdue for 10 years. I don't know how that happened, but according to everyone yesterday, it's 10 years. And I'm also the director of the USAID, so U.S. State Department Food Safety Innovation Lab. I definitely echo a number of things that Dr. Armstrong just mentioned. And now having students that have found their way to academic positions, government positions, and industry, it's fun to see everybody go in so many different directions. And it remains like the best part of this job is seeing students go be successful. It's the worst part of the job because that means we start over with new students, so we keep that wheel going, but there's nothing better than seeing students launch and go do what they want to do. And hopefully we can be useful as you think about what that looks like for you.
Thank you. And next we have Veronica Rahim. Go ahead, Dr. Veronica.
All right, you're speaking something into my life. I do not have a doctor.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I am.
Hey, you are the second person to be speaking into my life just this week. So, hey, you never know. But I'm glad to be in good company this afternoon. Really happy to be here. I work at the Center for Career Opportunities as a senior career services consultant and have really enjoyed seeing the progression of how MAP has really progressed over the years, and really excited to be here to talk about mentorship and career readiness, as I've had an opportunity over the years to have really wonderful conversations with students and alum alike in terms of their career preparation and really launching into their future professions. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to jump right into the questions, everyone. And so the first question I have for you today is, what are the best methods for mentors to use in making sure that mentees are prepared for life after graduation? So I'll just start randomly. Dr. Armstrong, we'll start with you. Again, what are the best methods for mentors to use in making sure that mentees are prepared for life after graduation?
I think number one is just, sometimes we have a tendency to when we have good students, we get comfortable and time passes. So I think one of the things is to kind of put myself and my graduate student, keep us abreast of time, where we are in this process. A lot of times you're very successful. Like I said, you're publishing papers, you may even be securing grants, and time goes out of the window. And you look up, if you're a master's student, 2 years is here in no time. PhD student, 4 years are here in no time. And so one of the things I like to do is to use departmental opportunities for growth as far as hiring and career readiness. And the best thing that you can do is sometimes we allow graduate students to be on the hiring committees for certain positions, pushing my students to get on those committees because they see the whole process from writing the announcement to recruiting the person to interviewing that person, especially when it's an assistant professor. If I have PhD students. Also, another point is having those students reviewing job announcements with the students. So as we get close to, let's say, the third year of the PhD, I'm saying, hey, go find some jobs that you think, some opportunities, career opportunities that you think are palatable to you. Bring them back and let's discuss them, right? Because often what happens is students are not aware of the hidden expectations when it comes to filling out that application and when it comes to actually, interviewing, such as, and you guys, the panel, you can chime in on this, such as things like, the statement of purpose, such as research philosophies, if you're going in academia, teaching philosophy. Now you have to deal with a diversity statement. How do you write that? Here's a nugget: negotiations, right? What's on the table, what's not? That's always something. So I can remember going to the job market, and when I got the job, I was like, yes, right? My first professor at Illinois State University, and my advisors were like, never show that kind of excitement. We still got a lot of work to do. And they said, make a shopping list. And I made like this little 5-point shopping list of things that I needed. And when I emailed that list out to my mentors, they emailed like 3 pages of things that I should ask for. And I was like, I'm not putting that forward because I never get the job. And they were like, you're gonna do it. And so I put it out, and I got all 3, almost every point of those 3 pages of shopping list of things that I would need. And that's called a starter package, right? That's a whole concept that was not on my radar. So to start off, I'm gonna stop there. Those hidden expectations and making and unveiling those things, and bringing off the scales of blindness off the students' eyes. Hey, this is gonna happen. They're gonna ask you for these things, and you're gonna be ready.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Armstrong. I always like to say, I agree with you. Allow the student to peek behind the curtain. So I think that's very important. So Dr. Oliver, what do you do to help prepare your students, the students that you mentor, for life after graduation?
On negotiating, I'm with you.
Oh, look at that.
Watch out. After I get done with this, get out of the way. I would echo a number of the same things. That one thing I really encourage my students to do, and I see one of them is actually on this call, is to diversify your graduate experience. The longer you go to school, the less utility you really have. At the end of the day, you become such a specialist that, you're good at that one thing, but you're about to leave this place of graduate school and go out and have a major gear switch, no matter what you do, industry, government, or academia, and you're going to have to pivot hard. I do nothing that I was trained to do once upon a time. I used to be a decent microbiologist. Now I have no idea what's going on there. But so diversify your program so that you're able to take advantage of opportunities that come your way. And that really kind of comes into point number 2, which is to take some risks. I've probably said yes to way too many things, and that has some consequences. But eventually you can back away from them and in a soft no. But what that has done is really helped me understand what I don't want to do. There's lots of things that I enjoy and I can get excited about a lot of things, but I think it's more important to understand what you don't want to do. And you can only figure that out through diversifying your experience and by taking some risks and then eventually saying, no, not that. That's why I don't work for the government. I tried it. It's not my thing. Probably never will. And then the last one, I think, as I look at incoming students or helping my students go out to get jobs, written and oral communication. Oh man, if you haven't mastered Zoom yet, if you haven't mastered, email etiquette and just putting together a quality sentence, it's such a big part of first impression. And whether we like it or not, it can be a big driver. So spend some extra time and effort, I think, as you think about going after your next steps, what that really looks like as a whole.
Thank you. Veronica, again, to remind everyone, you're the Senior Career Services Consultant here at Purdue University. And I would imagine, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you may interface with more undergraduates than grad students, perhaps not.
That's true.
If we can focus on the grad students, what advice would you have for graduate students, master's and doctoral students, to prepare for life after graduation once they earn their degree?
Sure. My first point would be to make sure that you are being as resourceful as possible. Many of you are already researchers, so you know what it takes to investigate, to ask the right questions, and to really unlock untapped information by being researchers and being resourceful. So making sure that you are tapping into that when it comes time to really think about career readiness, that is all transferable. Also, I want to talk about an organization called NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers. That's kind of like our consortium as it relates to career services and career readiness across the country, really across the globe. And there is a 7 competencies of career readiness that this organization has actually gone out to employers and had various conversations about what it is that they're looking for in their candidates. And one of those top competencies is career management. And that has a lot to do with your own ability to self-advocate. And also to be able to articulate what it is that you are looking for and why, and how you're going to be able to contribute in those ways. And so with that being said, I really agree with everything that has already been said. And so one of the ways in which you can do some of the things that Dr. Armstrong and Haley have already presented is really starting with your why. Really starting with, why did I get into this profession in the first place? Even when you're wanting to be flexible and having a variety of options and access points that you want to potentially transition professionally, you really want to establish kind of the foundation as to why you got into this in the first place and what it is you want to contribute. So I would offer that to start.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna go around and do it in a random fashion. So next question, I'm gonna start with you, Dr. Oliver. What lessons can be learned during this pandemic about crisis management and overcoming uncertainty that young professionals may need in their future careers?
Yeah, I think we've learned a whole lot of new words during the pandemic, right? One, pandemic is the word of the year. Shocking. Not very original or exciting in my opinion, but it is the word of the year. I think my favorite phrase right now, though, is pivot fatigue. And that's because we've had to adapt and change, and we're getting tired of change. And this has truly been a test, from the research side and from an international program implementer side, which is what I do for in all my spare time these days, is really testing resilience and grit and finding ways to keep that. I try to keep that at the front of my mind as, that's what I'm having to rely on significantly right now, and to realize that have a little more grace with myself, but also with others as we try to continue to conduct work in this really challenging time. And work looks different for everyone, whether it's, coursework for you or looking for a job, or even with a massive slowdown in research. I know my graduate students were extremely fatigued from the lack of ability to get back into the lab right away. And that was really stressful for them. I tried to remind them that, one, you're still employed. You are employed. I know it feels like you're burning time, but you are employed. And that is still a much better position than a significant percentage of people out there. So again, be kind to yourself, some grace and resilience. And then really what this has done is demonstrated or really pushed the limits for us on communication. And whether that's the bazillion platforms we're using, with my international programs, we have to have a fleet of pretty much every platform ready to go, whether that's WhatsApp, Zoom, WebEx, because of bandwidth and other needs. We need to be competent in each of those systems. And email is actually probably the least effective for us right now because we can't gauge tone and we are flooded with email. So picking up the phone, getting on Zoom, though Zoom fatigue is real too, to make sure we are communicating and understand where people are at is probably my biggest takeaway.
Thank you. Pivot fatigue, everyone. And before I go to you, Veronica, thank you, Dr. Knobloch. Dr. Knobloch, everyone, is the co-director for MAP, and he's taking some notes and putting in the chat. So thank you. Shout out to Dr. Knobloch for doing that. So Veronica, back to you. What could you say about crisis management and overcoming uncertainty? What lessons can students learn from these areas as they think about becoming young professionals?
Sure. Well, I think that, this organization, where we're talking about mentoring, the idea of being self-made just doesn't exist. And I think that this is a time where the reestablishment of the importance of community is really, really important. And so, you hear about networking all the time as being something that's important to do to really establish a sense of foundational knowledge, establishing a really true, strong connection to learning more about opportunities, about building your awareness in a profession. But even beyond that, I think that it's important to remember that in times of crisis, especially when we live in an individualistic society, that there's just kind of this resurgence of the idea that is important to connect with people in your network, and also continuing to further build your network to access opportunity and to really build your sense of knowledge of what's out there and building that awareness. So I think that we're really, in an effort to pivot and in an effort to really be effective in times like this, the need for true networks and community and connecting with your mentors is really, really important. So I'd offer that.
Thank you. Dr. Armstrong, how would you respond to that? What can students do? What lessons can be learned from about crisis management and operating functioning within crisis management, crises, and then uncertainty?
I'm not sure if he's there anymore, Doc. I don't know if there's something, maybe lost connection.
Thank you, Mal. Steve, if you can let me know when Dr. Armstrong gets back on. I'll come back to this question when he gets back on. So I'll move to the next question then. Dr. Oliver, what are the most important things students should focus on during their time in graduate school for career readiness?
Oh, wow. I think I was extremely fortunate, in my graduate program that I did have a lot of opportunities for very specific professional development. It wasn't microbiology. It was something well outside of that. And one really memorable, opportunities was actually hosting speakers. Everything from making sure their hotel, rental car, and preparing agendas, and really the extreme detail that a professional expects. when they come to campus was probably one of the most useful things, non-research that I was exposed to in graduate school, to just, again, honing those professional skills. And I think there's even a question kind of in your list too, that kind of looks at what can we doing during the pandemic, but it's still refining communication, I think. And even though we're hosting so many things online, there's still an expectation for things to go well. Trust me, I hosted a webinar for the government with 200 plus people on it, and my video froze. It's still horrifying. But doing everything you can to prepare, I think, is a big piece of it.
Okay. Dr. Armstrong, thank you for coming back. I'll come back to the question, but I'll stay on the one now. And the question is, what are the most important things students should focus on during their time in graduate school for career readiness?
I think, as you get to the point where you're about to emerge into your career, I think taking time to define your self-value. I think that's really important. It's going to help you negotiate. It's going to help you. When I say self-value, what does that mean? So if you are a PhD student, you've done your undergrad, you've done 2 or 3 years of master's, and then you're about to complete about 4 years of your PhD. If you're going into academia in, let's say, plant science or social sciences, right? You need to look around and see, what's the going value of an assistant professor coming into your discipline with, universities that are comparable to Purdue, right? You can even go from, tier 1 universities to mid-major and so forth, and just understand your value coming into the market. And if you can negotiate higher because you have certain experiences that you have attained and accumulated over time, then you need to be able to, on paper and verbally express that very well. But if you're not confident in that number for yourself, you just kind of float, and you kind of put the ball in your employer's court instead of you driving that conversation.
Thank you. Veronica, how would you respond to that? What are the most important students should focus on during their time in grad school for career readiness?
Sure. I would say don't shy away from conducting informational interviews, especially with professionals in the field that maybe you have not connected with in the past. They may not know you internally from your experience at Purdue, so they can give you a really unbiased, outside, more insider scoop about the profession, their experiences, their insight, and you can get really, really good advice from a variety of professionals. I remember when I was in graduate school, even as a part of the job search, I did a lot of cold calling and reaching out to professionals in career counseling, as well as academic advising, as that was another area that I was interested in. And especially when I was traveling for conferences and going to be in a variety of areas, I was able to make contact with directors of career centers and programs to be able to sit down and have really great conversations. And they gave me great information that I otherwise would not have had access to by just reading a university's, mission statement or their website. So you're really getting the inside scoop from that perspective. So like I said, don't be afraid to make those calls. There are going to be some people that may reject you or not even answer or respond to an email. But the point is that you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to actually say yes to a request to sit down and have a conversation. And we know that right now virtual is kind of the way to go. And that is okay. So as long as you have access to a variety of platforms to be able to have those virtual conversations, it can be just as effective or even a phone conversation. So don't shy away from the virtual interaction that you can have with those informational interviews, not to mention the fact that a lot of those informational interviews may lead to those individuals being so impressed with you that they actually want to vouch on your behalf to gain you access to job opportunities that, again, you otherwise would not have gained access to.
Some great advice, excellent advice. And again, everyone, be mindful of the questions you have. place those in the chat. Ariel, I see your question. We'll get to that question in about 1:45. So let me move on to the next question. So Dr. Armstrong, in what ways can students gain these professional skills in light of the fact that most of their daily interactions are virtual? So how can they work around that?
You know, one of the things that I suggest is as a mentor, I think we have to expose our students, especially if we know the direction that they want to go in. So let's say if they want to be, sometimes I get students and they're in job, they want to be an extension specialist. They want to educate adults based on their results from their research and so forth. So I try to put those students in position to sharpen those skills early. So I get a number, because my research program is applied, I get a number of invites, and virtually, I get too many, right? And so I have to instead of turning them down, I look at my students and their profiles and say, okay, you fit this group, so if I get something that I can't handle in this area, I get you exposed. And so now the industry knows who you are, who you're connected to. And if you do a good job, you're impressive to them. They keep you in mind. If I'm working on something with a private company, in the same manner, if I know that a student is, leaning towards industry, then I put them in position. Even if they're not, if they have the skill set that agrees with what we're trying to accomplish, the objectives, I put them in position to be exposed. And I try to let them be exposed to as much as possible without ruining them, right? To let them see the good, the bad, and the ugly about, negotiating and facilitating some of these relationships. So I would say exposure.
Thank you. Dr. Oliver, I'm going to pose the same question to you. So how can students gain some of these professional development skills that they need when, in fact, most of their daily interactions are virtual? So how would you speak to that?
Yeah, I would echo exactly what Veronica mentioned about actually interviewing professionals in the field. I actually had one PhD student who works for the USDA now. That she did this about once a month. She would schedule a call with somebody she met at a conference just to do what she called a career interview, just to understand what they did, because she didn't know if she wanted to do academia, government, or industry. And so she would just schedule once a month. She'd leverage her network or mine and actually just formally kind of interview that person, just to talk about, what do you do all day? What do you love? What do you hate? How do you excel in this career? What's the trajectory look like? And ultimately that helped her really make some pretty big decisions. You don't have all the time in the world in graduate school to go try out all mini, kind of mini sabbaticals. I let my students do take breaks during grad school if they want to go actually intern somewhere, because again, making that decision of what you want to do long game is not easy, but echoing that interviews are really, really important. And most people, it's like this call right here. You ask people a question, they just want to talk about themselves and share their experience anyway. So they're really not going to turn you down.
Right, good point. Veronica, anything you want to add in terms of, how do you help students gain the skills they need when everything's virtual?
Yes, there's three things I want to add to that. So one, I have to talk about LinkedIn, right? I mean, it just makes sense, right? In addition to being able to build that profile that kind of builds your brand, your professional brand, or really speaks to your professional brand, being able to conduct the job search on LinkedIn itself, but you also have the opportunity to join groups that allow you to engage with professionals from across the globe as they relate to the group that you're interested in, that particular topic. And you can engage in conversation, you can learn, build from there. But then there are also access to online events that are posted there, some of which have a cost associated, but many of which are free. So again, you're able to kind of use that as a one-stop shop to be able to access groups, not to mention the Purdue alumni group that you can join even as a current Purdue student. So if you're a current Purdue student right now and you want to join that group to gain access to all the wide variety of alum that you may be able to connect with to have those great conversations, I would encourage you to do that. The second thing I wanted to mention was the reality that when we think about professional development, we're not just thinking about your current major or your program, but we're thinking about the fact that we're all multifaceted. We're thinking about identity. We're thinking about interest. We're thinking about affinity. So I really want you to think about your professional development from not just the scope of whatever academic program you're pursuing in academic professional goal you have, but even how some of your affinity and interest areas may tie into that and really broaden how you can enhance accessing professional trainings, certifications, and the like. And the last thing I want to share is something that a consultant that I had the pleasure of meeting at a leadership training, Lindsay Picardo, mentioned, and she's not the first person to mention this, but the idea of a life team. And really thinking about, as a student, it's really important for you all to, in addition to accessing a person who, or persons who are a mentor, what about a therapist? What about a career coach? What about a financial advisor, a nutritionist, even a spiritual advisor, if you believe in a higher power? Because all those things tie together as you're trying to make your transition about career readiness, because we are whole people, multifaceted people. So don't want you to compartmentalize the professional development. So wanted to offer that too.
And Veronica, one question before I go to the next one is, in your role with the career services as a career services consultant, do you all offer services and help graduate students? I assume you do, because I imagine there are a lot of folks on here who may not know what your office does. So
Sure. I don't mind sharing. So basically, we serve all students, no matter the degree level. So in addition to the career consultants working with undergraduate students, we do work with graduate level students in terms of career counseling. So if you're wanting to sit down and have an in-depth conversation about your pathway in terms of transitioning professionally and what it takes in terms of making that process happen and preparing for that, really navigating that, we can have those conversations. We also have job search appointments. So if you really want to sit down and talk about specific strategies that align with some of those professional goals that you have, we can gain you access to different resources. Right now, you already have access to various resources, Aurora, Science Careers, Going Global for international opportunities and for international students as well. So lots of great resources we can connect you to, but we do serve international students, undergrads, graduate students, the like. And we even have a graduate student, senior career services consultant, Amrutha Inamdar, who many of you have already probably worked with in the past, but all of us are trained to work with you, no matter your degree level or your major.
all right, thank you. All right, everyone, use these resources. There's a lot of good stuff out here. So I'm going to broach a topic that everyone, panelists, that we hear a lot about, but it's not addressed. And so I would like to start with you, if I may, Dr. Oliver. Here's the question. How should mentors engage their graduate students who wish to have a career outside of academia? And also, I added this earlier today as I thought about this question, because, you know, sometimes there's tension that exists between a student and their advisor, or even the committee. So could you speak to this? Because I know some of the work you do, Dr. Oliver, working with business industry and the like. And so how would you respond to that question?
Well, I think that's a great question, a great multifaceted question, and that, you know, we as mentors we're the gate check on ourselves on helping a student do what they want. You know, we are really just granted 5% or, you know, maybe 10% of somebody's life. You know, it's tangible percentages, but you are going to leave us. And it is not my job to reproduce myself. We have me. We want to see what you want to do. And so I think it's always fascinating to watch, particularly PhD students, which is mainly what my lab's built from. Everybody kind of starts out with an interest. They want to teach. They want to be in academia. And I make sure that they see every dirty piece of this job to make sure that, yeah, do you really want to do this job? And it comes back to, again, that exploring all of your opportunities. An academic career is the inverse trajectory in a way, or inverse experience of what industry and government can be, in that, you know, as we go from assistant professor to associate professor, that's the hardest part of your life. In theory, that's the burn it down point. And that's where you're going to work probably the hardest, or at least it's going to feel like it, as opposed to a longer, maybe industry career where, you know, the higher you go up the chain, the more responsibilities. We have a flipped model here. It is my job to remember that this job is not for everyone. And each student, there's a strange kind of stress and pressure that comes with this job. And the unknown unknowns are very real when you show up. The negotiating piece. You didn't realize that you are about to be a small business owner. All I do is pay people. You know, I don't get to be in the lab anymore. My job is to hustle money to make sure everybody can get paid. And so I think being transparent about what the jobs are, see how you can fit into, or how that fits into what you want to do, is my responsibility 100% as a mentor.
Thank you. Dr. Armstrong, how would you respond to that? How do you engage your graduate students who maybe don't want to pursue a academic career, a faculty, a tenure track position? How do you do your mentorship and advice giving?
So first of all, I think this whole piece starts off with relationship. Across the university, professors deal with graduate student relations totally different, right? I'm one that really, I engage really with some intensity, especially early on, because I need to know who I'm working with, right? I know you on paper, you excited me, I extended an assistantship to you, but now that you're here, I need to really know who you are, that I may properly position you to help yourself, help me, and then to help your future, right? And so I make an effort, especially prior to COVID, but even now, to kind of weekly check in. If they don't text or call me, I'm texting or calling them. And so what that does is help me understand who they are. I think two things will let me know, what they want to do. Number one, their strengths. Number two, their interests. And if I can merge them or marry those two, I could position you despite where you want to work. Because we already have the network, right? And so we just need to know what you want to do. And it takes time to really know what that student. They come in wanting to be like you. And then after about a year, they're like, no. Some of them are like, no, that's all right. You work too hard. I don't want to do that. And so I need to know that. And I have to keep in touch. And then from there, again, I try to expose them to different places in my network that takes them, at least puts them in the direction or in the presence of people that can take them to places they want to go. So I think it's all about relationship. And if they decide to go in academia, I mean, we know that, right? But industry, we collaborate. We don't really know it intimately, or at least I don't know all the industry areas intimately. So I push them into people's hands, but I got to know what you want to do first. So I think relationship is key.
Thank you. So Veronica, what would you do if someone, there are lots of grad students on this call today, and they reached out to you and they say, Veronica, I'm struggling. I have my advisor and my committee. They're trying to force me to be like them, to be a faculty member or pursue a tenure track position. So what advice would you give to a student who really has interest outside that of academia and wants to work in business industry? How would you address that question?
Sure. And I think from the space of a mentor, the idea of empathy is really important. I think starting from there, and I agree with everything that was already said. So starting from that place is really important, because it's going to be a really hard decision for a lot of our graduate students, especially those who have come into the space and been on that same track in their minds that they're going to be a faculty member, that they're going to go into academia, and that has been the dream from day one. And now it's, year 3.5, and they're like, oops, guess what? That's not really the case. So really, serving as a true safe space and a sounding board, I think is really important. Sometimes just having that opportunity for those students to be able to share in depth their experience, their situation, where they are mentally, and not just really listening. can be really helpful to those students, because sometimes they're able to come to, in addition to being the person who can give them access to additional resources and maybe articles to read, or pass them off to other people in our network, or come to the CCO, have that conversation. A lot of it could just be this kind of reinforcement and confidence to those students that they really have what it takes to make that particular transition, and that actually might be a really good fit, but really giving them kind of that confidence to know these are the ways in which you can access that smoothly, and know that that's a good choice for you. So again, the empathy, serving as that sounding board in that safe space, are some things that I would add to the things I agree with that were already said.
Well, thank you. All right, so what I'm going to do now, panelists, is transition to field some questions from our audience. And I have a question here, and whoever wants to respond first among the panelists, feel free. The question is from Ariel Smith, who, AK the Food Truck Scholar. So shout out to the Food Truck Scholar. If you don't know about her, you need to ask somebody, as they say. So her question is this: for those looking beyond the academy and or looking to consult, how would you find the going rate? So whoever, Oliver, Dr. Armstrong, Veronica, whoever wants to respond first, go ahead.
I'm going to jump in, and I'll tell you what I tell my graduate students. You're not qualified to consult because you don't have any experience other than maybe the research that you've done. But it depends on what kind of consulting we're really talking about. I mean, we work in food safety, and you know, when you've done your PhD, you've really drilled down into this very narrow space, at least when it comes to a bacteria. Like literally, I studied one gene in a bacterium. That does not qualify me to go talk to industry or the government on policy, or, you know, understanding where your brackets are. I think when you walk out the door is pretty important. You don't want to, especially in something risky like what we do that impacts public health, we got to be careful where we go. But, you know, how do you find a going rate? You leverage your network. There are plenty of consultants, like as Veronica mentioned, on LinkedIn. I can speak to the food safety space. I've got a fleet of them, and they'd be happy to talk with somebody about how they got started. They usually have had a couple 5 to 10, sometimes 25 years of experience in industry before they branch out on their own and take that type of career risk. I consider that career risk in a way, especially if you're going to be independently employed. But just talk to the people there. Again, you ask the right questions that dig into how people's jobs and how they do it, they're going to answer, because it's fun to talk about what you do all day, especially if they're really successful at it. They're going to be pretty transparent.
Veronica, Dr. Armstrong, you want to respond to that in any way? How do you determine the going rate if you're interested?
I'll defer to Dr. Armstrong first.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just going to echo the network right there. If you can get feedback from the network, so make friends. And you listen, here's the other thing. Don't be afraid to take your strength. Let's say I had a student who emerged to be a very good programmer and coder. Now, her research forced her to do that, right? And so at the end of her degree, it was like, out of all this stuff, you're an excellent, programmer, and so she then linked up with some consultants and did some stuff pro bono. Now, what that allowed her to do is they used her skill. She got to show off her skill, and then she got close to people that she wanted to be like, right? And so she got to ask some questions that she wouldn't necessarily be able to ask with a cold call or unsolicited letter or what have you, email. So, you got to be creative, but the network feedback is what you need to understand that number.
Yeah. Thank you, Veronica.
And the only thing I would add is, Ariel, there have been a lot of people that have come on campus to have conversations, some of which that you all have brought to have conversations about getting started in their own industry and things of that nature. So I would say tap back into some of those same people to have those conversations, because now you have inside access to those individuals. So just a couple names like Chelsea Hayes, even Arlen Hamilton that came a couple months ago, just to throw out a couple of reminders there might be some individuals that have been doing some different type of work and have also gone down the route of serving in consultancy, and can give you some insight based off of that initial connection that you've made from before. So I would also reference that, and that also applies to anybody else who had that same question. Remember people that you've already engaged with, who you can return back to and having those conversations.
Veronica, I want to, this question was on the list, so, but I know you're well prepared. All of you are prepared for this question. So Veronica, what advice would you have for those on this call today who may have a LinkedIn, but it's not, they want to spruce it up a little bit? You know, what is some advice you can give for folks? Where can they turn to really learn how to really create a powerful LinkedIn? What advice would you give on that, to that question?
I would simply say, make a job search strategies appointment at the CCO, and we can actually have a one-on-one conversation with you, because the whole point is for us to be able to ask you some individualized questions about your experiences. Sometimes that probing has you thinking of things that you, one, didn't remember to add to your profile, or two, didn't think that you could. So it's really a matter of us providing that consultancy with you, free of charge, of course, where you can actually be able to be empowered to know what makes sense to be added to that particular profile to really strengthen it. So I would encourage that one-on-one interaction, and we'd be happy to do that with you.
You better. I'm thinking I might stop by. I'm sure
please.
my LinkedIn is nothing to be proud of right now.
We'd be happy to work with you.
I agree. I'll be there.
Oh no!
I see that.
Don't use mine.
Adios.
The chat is blowing up. People giving shout outs and plugs to Veronica. So if you don't know her, you better get to know her. So hey, that's what I would say do. Dr. Oliver and Dr. Armstrong, let me ask you this question. How has your advising changed, especially for those students who are close to graduating? You know, what have you learned in this pandemic? Now we've been in for 9 months. What have you learned to do differently to really make sure that they are prepared for those jobs? And you know, what are some things that maybe for those who are faculty on here may want to maybe glean something from this advice that you have for us? What have you done differently to really help your students that you probably wouldn't have done before if it wasn't for the pandemic?
Yeah, I think something that I became keenly aware of is how important my presence as the advisor, the mentor really is. During outside of the pandemic, right? I guess I took the connectivity that I had with my graduate students for granted, because it's something that's natural to me. You know, I have a team spirit. So when somebody come a part of my team, I'm tapping into them constantly. And then when COVID-19, restricted our coming together, and that ecosystem that we had developed, everybody was scared and we didn't see each other as much. And so I found out that the connectivity was important, really important. I thought, oh, they got it. You know, they're going to be fine. They're going to enjoy not seeing me, not hearing me. But it's actually the opposite. It's like, I'm lost, I'm stuck. And I'm like, why? You were doing well, but just having that nudge. So, and that's helping them stay abreast of time. There are deliverables and products. You know, if you're just coming in, you know, where's your proposal? If you're going out, where are your publications, right? Because that's like currency. Right, that's the first thing that employers look at. You know, what have you put out to add to the scientific community? So helping them stay aware of those things and helping them stay connected to the opportunity to keep looking forward, because COVID can make you kind of clam up. I think as mentors, we should help students. You know, this thing's not going to last always. Keep looking forward. So just presence, replacing that presence.
Thank you. Dr. Oliver, anything you've learned over the last 9 months that you maybe have started that you probably would never have considered before?
I would echo absolutely everything Dr. Armstrong just said. And I will fully own, it's been extremely difficult for me to stay connected. I mean, my U.S. State Department program forges on, but the lab has had to become more self-sufficient because of that. And you layer in the pandemic aspect of this with less of my presence. I'm usually travel a lot, but this is almost worse than me traveling, because then there was just the routine of checking in, and it's difficult. And I also moved in the middle of this, which was really disruptive. Why not do it all at once? But again, I think coming back to the idea of having a little bit of grace and checking in on people, and hopefully they're offering the same to us. You know, I know we hear a lot as faculty members how stressed students are. We are too. We are too. Because, you know, if you don't know, a graduate student costs about $50,000 a year. And if we don't have those funds, you don't get the opportunity, and the whole research and teaching machine on the graduate side can grind to a halt. So I've felt pushed and stressed through this, and yeah, staying connected has been the challenge, because I think similarly, I try to create a lab culture. I really screen students hard that come into my program, and they interview with each of my current students independently, because it's a group decision of who we bring in, because we have a culture that we like to maintain of really open, transparent, non-compete. And I worry that gets a little fragile as we look at challenges in communication during the pandemic, but let it be done soon so we can get back to face-to-face, and things like dinner parties and just being together one-on-one is a big part of how I do business. And that has really, the lack of that has really strained, I think, research operations.
Thank you. Dr. Knobloch, I'm going to let your fingers rest for a little bit. You have a question that you want to ask that maybe you've been thinking about over the last 45 minutes or so that you want to pose to the panelists?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dr. Esters, for facilitating the panel, and thanks to each of you for serving on this panel. It's been fun to try to do some real-time note-taking here. My question is going to be reflective. And so think back to where you were as a graduate student and project yourself to where you are today and say, I wish I would have known, or I wish I would have done, or I wish someone would have told me. What's the first thing that comes to mind as you think back and then project yourself to where you would be today?
I know what mine is. I shouldn't have complained about how hard graduate school was, because it got worse and it just keeps getting harder. The more responsibility that we all take on, you know, I said it's kind of an inverse career model, but you know, if you really live the academic life hardcore, you just keep doing more and changing what you do, and it just keeps expanding. And so while graduate school was extremely challenging, it's a major development and learning, and you figure out who you are, I think, more so in graduate school than any other time in your life. But know that it does have the potential to get more difficult. So embracing what it is, enjoying graduate school for what it is as a really nice protected time. Again, looking back, what would I have done differently? I would have postdoced a lot longer. Now that's bliss right there. But just understand that the responsibilities are large, and the higher the degree or the more educated you become, there can be expectations of you using that degree, and the, you know, heavy lies the crown, I guess, if you want to call it that, in some aspects, at least from my experience.
I'll go, and I think my answer is interesting because it ties into what I was going to answer to Dr. Esther's previous question. I wish I had gotten out of my own head more by putting more down on paper. Get a really good journal. Write things down in terms of your goals, your expectations, anything that comes up that you want to ask about later, ideas. I think a lot of, I mean, you all are doing a ton of reading already. You all are doing a lot of research. You're already kind of in the mind of kind of, the academic world, but like, what about, how are you in your own mind? And how are you capturing that information so that you can do something with it further? So I think a lot of times we're processing and thinking a lot, but how are you capturing it and really getting it out of your head so that you can actually do something practical and promising with it? So I wish I had gotten out of my own head, journaled more, and utilized that to push myself forward.
Thank you. And Dr. Armstrong.
Yeah, that was a tough question. I enjoyed thinking about it. I would say, so when I was in graduate school, two things that I was forced to do, right? Well, graduate school forces you to kind of funnel down and be very specific. And it also forces you to be a part of a team. You never really learn how to think about and sell yourself, right? And so when you go into a professorate in academia, you're basically a small business owner. And I was not, I would say that was a steep learning curve for me to think about my lab, my people, what I need, first, not thinking about collaborating and walking down the hall and being a part of this group. No, you have to establish yourself so that when collaboration comes, you have something to put down on the table. And so, almost like entrepreneurship, really thinking about how to develop your brand, your infrastructure, and then make yourself unique that people invite you to the table because you have something that they don't have. That skill set I learned by being in the Shark Tank of Purdue University. I didn't have it prior to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for that question, Dr. Knobloch. So let me end by saying a few things. I have several thank yous. Number one, let me thank each panelist, Dr. Armstrong, Dr. Oliver, and Veronica. Thank you 1,000 times over for making yourself available and for sharing your insights and wisdom with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I also want to say thank you again to my colleague, Dr. Knobloch, who also serves as the co-director, as well as the MAP team, Stephen, Zach, Ariane, Victoria, Cornell, Ryan, and Andres. Thank you for all your hard work this semester. We have everyone had some great webinars this semester. We'll be doing the same thing next semester, so we're not going away. So be on the lookout for the flyer sometime early in January, announcing what those webinars will be. But I just want to say that today's topic was phenomenal. So I learned a lot, and thank you for Dr. Knobloch for putting everything in the chat. Thank you for the question, Ariel. Food Truck Scholar, follow her. Veronica, go see her. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. And I will end by saying, there's a lot. I know we're coming to the end of 2020. So hopefully 2021 will be better for all of us. I really do. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who was able to be with us today. Your support means a lot to us. And again, we'll continue this next semester. So I always like to say, I like to start on time and end on time. And it's just struck the hour of 1 o'clock. So thank you everyone for being here with us today. Enjoy the holiday, get through these last few weeks, and then anticipate a happy new year. And we'll see each other in 2021. So thank you again and be safe.